Hey everybody, this is Hope from Bros Before Bros. I'm alive! Yay! Yay! So I am here tonight to talk to you guys about some books I read in the last 2 weeks. Um, yeah, so let's just hop into it. So there's actually 7 books I read altogether. I'm going to only briefly touch base on some of them. I'm not going to go into all of them. Just some ones that I recommend that you pick up that I didn't care for. There was a couple of those, but we'll just jump right into it. So, overall, I read 2 physical books, but in terms of ebooks and audiobooks, I read a combined 5 of those. I know some people don't care for audiobooks. That's your prerogative, whatever. I don't see any difference in it. Um, that's probably a conversation for later on. But, anyways, the first book that I want to talk about is, I know you guys are going to be like, Hope, what the hell is going on with these biographies? You're driving us nuts. Yes, it's another biography, and it's the biography titled John, and it's by Cynthia Lennon. So you're probably like, if you don't know who the hell's John, I'm talking about John Lennon. So John Lennon is, was. He was one of the founding fathers of the Beatles, 1960s British rock band. They had started their band, I believe it was like 1956 when they started, and they ended up officially breaking up in 1970. Little background on me. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I love the Beatles. I have ever since I was 8 years old. And I used to be a huge Beatle guru nerd. So anytime that you would quiz me, I would have an answer. In fact, my father-in-law, who's also a Beatles fan, makes it like a Thanksgiving tradition to ask me what, ask me these random questions about the Beatles, and usually it ends up us getting in an argument because I'm right, and it really irritates him. But anyway, I've had to pick this up because I was a Beatles fan, and this has been sitting on my, it's probably been sitting on my shelf literally for the last 10 years. I don't know why I didn't pick it up until now. I just got hankering, another Ohio terminology, to read this book. So, again, this is by John's first wife, Cynthia Lennon, who knew him from 1958 clear up to the time of his death, which was in 1980. And she talks about her life with him. She talks about her early relationship with him, clear up to the divorce and how they came together shortly before their death, not as lovers or anything, but as not even friends, but acquaintances, I guess, unfortunately. So, yeah, this is the back here. If you can see, this is Cynthia, obviously. We got John. This was taken in 1964 when John Lennon and the Beatles were coming to America for their first American tour. So, I ended up giving this book 4 stars on Goodreads, and you guys are going to hear me gripe about Goodreads quite a bit today because I just hate the rating system. Realistically, I would give this about 3.75 stars. But on Goodreads, you don't have that option, so 4 stars it is, right? But it follows Cynthia discussing her marriage and her relationship overall with John. Really intriguing stuff. Like I said, I've known a lot of stuff about the Beatles, but there was some things in here that I did not necessarily know about John. And some of the things, if you're a John Lennon fan like I am, it could be heartbreaking because he had this persona back in the late 60s, early 70s, throughout the whole 70s, that he was really a man of peace. He believed fully in equal rights for people, and he was very vocal about that. In fact, I had a poster hanging up inside my bedroom as a teenager with his lyrics to Imagine on it. Um, there's so many things that I say, quotes and mannerisms of John Lennon on the daily that, it's great in my life. You see him as a very peaceful individual, and then in this book you don't see that because it's really John Lennon, and like you see the goods and the bads of his life, his persona. There is a part inside the book where he hits Cynthia during their relationship. He got jealous and slapped her. He later on admitted that he regretted it to her, and she said that never happened again. But it's those kind of things that are disheartening in this book. So you get to see the real nitty gritty. But this book was really good. It was really insightful. And it made you sad and happy at the same time because, like, at first, with their relationship, you could see where it was disintegrating by the end and how Cynthia had to scrap herself together and basically become a strong, independent, on her own person. And she did it by herself. She finally got to that stage where she could be vocal without worrying about how her male counterparts would take it. So, very interesting book. The Fort is by John's son, his first son, Julian Lennon. If you guys recognize that name, it's because he was really famous in the 80s. He released one of his records that went platinum in the 80s, and he's currently an indie author, not indie author. He's an indie musician, artist, and I believe he does photography on the side. He does a whole bunch of different stuff. He's a humanitarian, really amazing individual, just like his father. He was very artistically just amazing. So this book was really interesting. I definitely would recommend it to anybody that cares or enjoys reading biographies, particularly biographies based in the 1960s. It's very heavy in this. If you like reading about the mainstream music of the 1960s, this is a great hit as well. So yeah, definitely check it out. All right, next book that I'm super excited to talk about. Whew. Try not to hiccup. It seems like it always happens on these videos, right? Is Nappily Ever After. And this is by Trisha R. Thomas. And as you can tell, it's got the little Netflix sticker there saying that's been made into a Netflix film. I haven't seen the film yet because I've been dying to read this, and it's been on my TBR since December. So yeah, finally got a chance to read, so I can now sit down and watch the film. I'm so excited. But this book is a book based in a series. I believe they have Nappily. Oh gosh, they had a couple books, and I can't remember what they are. All of a sudden, Nappily Ever After. There's one where she gets married, I think. There's like a whole series of books, and I'm dying to pick those up as soon as they become available at my library. Oh, the holds on my library. But anyway, follows the story of a young professional lady by the name of Venus Johnston. She's got a wonderful job. She's got this boyfriend. For some reason, the boyfriend doesn't want to commit. She's just having all these things, but she's struggling. She's really struggling, especially with this boyfriend. He doesn't want to get married. He's been with her for several years, and she just doesn't get it. And finally, she just is like, the hell with this. So it opens up with the beginning theme of her going to her trusted longtime hairdresser and saying, cut off my hair. She's got this really long, luscious hair. It's been conditioned and it's been through chemical treatments. Very common for a Black lady to go through. And her hairdresser's like in shock. She's like, why do you want to cut off your beautiful hair? And she's like, just do it. Just do it. I need to change. So sure enough, she cuts off all her hair. She walks out. And she begins from literally the ground up again in terms of her self esteem. So she walks out of the salon. She's waiting for reactions. Some of the reactions she gets from men in particular is either none at all, non-existent. They don't even look at her. To what the hell did you do? You were perfectly fine the way you were. So obviously, very opposite sides of the spectrum. So it kind of takes a blow to her self esteem, and she has to learn over time to build up her own self esteem again. And a situation like this where she cuts off her hair, she essentially becomes very empowered over time because she starts stepping out of the comfort level of having to worry about her hair all the time. She could just go into work as she is. And she really grows into a phase of self love that she realizes over time that she's perfectly content with herself. Where when she was in her relationship with her boyfriend, she didn't feel content, she felt unsettled. So we get to see that scene, and I love the fact that this book is so heavy on that self development and eventually becoming comfortable with yourself and loving yourself for who you are. The one thing that just kept me from giving this a 4 star, I end up giving it 3 stars on Goodreads. Again, I wish I could have given it 3.5, but we won't go into that. The reason why I didn't give it a 4 star is there was some stuff in here that I just felt was unnecessary. There's a particular scene where she is being stalked. I just didn't see the point in it. I felt like it was just too cumbersome for the entirety of the book. And what I really wish we could have done was pull away from, that unnecessary drama and just focus on the development of her becoming the strong, very independent, very outspoken female. But that's just my personal take. I like I said, this is a series, and I haven't read the rest of the series. The rest of the series could be a further development of her character. Definitely let me know what you guys think about this one. If you've read the book or if you've read the entire series, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I'm anxious to get my hand on the second of the series, but it just really depends on when my library will be able to fulfill it. So there we go. Loved it. All right. So moving on to my ebooks and my audiobooks. The next book that I want to talk about is Saw Kill Girls by Claire Legrand. And I apologize, I don't have an image to show you. But the name is Saw Kill Girls. If you look up in Google, I'm sure you guys would recognize off the bat. It's been talked about quite a bit in the booktube community. And guys, I did not like this book. And I wish I did. There's a lot of booktubers that did enjoy this book. One, in fact, is a booktuber that I absolutely adore. And most of the time, I'm really spot on with her in terms of our ratings on books. I really do agree with what she says about the books that she reads. And she loved this book, and I just couldn't get into it. So we follow the characters of Marion, Zoe, and Val. And they are basically on this mission to find out who or what is making these young women from their small New England town disappear, or end up being murdered. So I like it in the fact that it was very gung ho in being a female based representation, and they're coming together to power through whatever this thing is that's causing these young girls to disappear. That was great. They had queer representation, which again, I found that really good. I feel like a lot of these young adult books need to have that. I couldn't get into the writing. I felt the writing was just not great. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't my cup of tea. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I think that I realistically would have gave it 2.5 if I could. But honestly, I just wasn't a fan of it. It wasn't my cup of tea, if you would like to say that. The next book that I read was I Woke Up Dead at the Mall, and that was by Judy Sheenan. It follows the story of a 16-year-old girl by the name of Sarah. Sarah wakes up in the Mall of America and finds out that she's dead, and she actually died of a murder. Somebody had murdered her, and before she could go on to either being reincarnated or becoming an angel, she has to find out why she was murdered and who did it. Um, so it's a journey as to seeing her figure this out. It didn't come as no surprise to me who did it. It was very obvious after I read the first two chapters. So I did give the book 3 stars because of that. I really wanted a little more suspense, but it just seemed so obvious. Um, it does have some insta love in it. Another thing that kind of drug it down. I wanted a little more development. I felt like the book was short enough that you could stretch out a little bit more to talk about the development of the relationship. I do love the characters in the book. I feel like the characters really developed. The only thing I did not care for with one characters is Sarah's character. She has a very Valley Girl vibe to her. Like, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about like an 1980s reference, Valley Girl, you know. I'm trying to do like representation of this without cracking up, but like totally tubular, like that's so totally awesome. Oh, wow. I don't know. You guys have to remember when Valley Girl came out, I was only like 1 or 2 years old. So I didn't have to go through that traumatic phase in my life. Thank God. So yeah, I could, as I was reading it, I just got that grainy voice stuck in my head because the way the sentences were laid out for her conversation, and it just kind of drug me down. You guys know how I am with that. I like to have a little more intelligence with the characters. I felt like it just dumbed Sarah down when she talked that way. But at the same time, it makes sense. She was 16 inside the book, so yeah, you can't have her talking like a full blown adult. All right, the next book that I'm excited to talk about, and I'm sure you guys are going to be like, Hope, this book is so damn old. Why did you just now read it? Whatever. Um, is The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick. And yes, the reason why I didn't read it when it first came out is there was just so much hype about it. And at that time, I didn't like the hypey stuff. I just wanted to read my classics and be left alone. Not to sound crazy, but I mean, I just like to read older content then, or I wasn't really into that hype, and I guess I still have that vibe now, but I didn't read it at the time. And over time, I decided, stop yawning. Decided just to pass it up. Well, recently I decided to pick it up again because I believe it fell in my Libby app as a recommended read, so I decided I was going to give it a shot. It follows the story of a young man by the name of Pat. I believe he's in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, and he had spent 2 years in a mental institution. He doesn't really remember the details of why he ended up there. He remembers that he was taking a break from his wife, Nikki, per her request. And he also realizes that he really cannot stand Kenny G. Anytime he hears a particular song by Kenny G, he flips his shit and does crazy stuff. So, yeah, you have that. He's finally released out on the request of his mother. His mother and his father decide to take him into their house. And he's trying to adjust because he's been away for 2 years. He doesn't really know what has gone on outside the institution. He finds out his brother had gotten married. His mom has taken down all of Pat's wedding photos. Just his wedding video, the VHS is missing. So it's like a strange world for him. So he's trying to adjust to being out in this world. And he's still absolutely obsessively in love with his ex-wife, Nikki. At the time, he doesn't realize that she's an ex-wife just yet. Um, so he's trying to do things to better himself mentally, physically, etc. And one of the things that he um, adopts is a silver linings playbook, essentially, where he looks at the positives of life. The reason why I enjoyed this book is because of the conversations of them talking about mental health. Um, it really discusses how our society looks at mental health, what the stigma is behind it. And as a person that has suffered with depression, anxiety, I've had firsthand counts of dealing with stigma that is out there. My first serious relationship, unfortunately, um, it was also my abusive relationship, and I have a hard time discussing it sometimes. I had come out to my boyfriend and told him I'm really depressed, I'm suicidal, I'm not doing good. And it was a time when I was also self harming. And he looked me in the face and he said, with a laugh, "You're crazy." And he dismissed it just like that. And I should have taken that as a sign that it was time to leave. And unfortunately, I didn't. Uh, but that was the stigma that I developed, and I stopped talking about my health in terms of my mental capacity, where I was so depressed that sometimes I couldn't get out of bed. And it's a struggle. It's a real big struggle in our society. And the fact that this book discusses it was such a refreshing concept. I know that sounds crazy because it should be something that's on the forefront, right? So there are several instances where Pat is reflecting on how he's perceived by other people in terms of um, his mental disability. I don't even want to use the term disability because I think everybody struggles with depression or whatnot. But he doesn't want, people to look at him like he's crazy, and he experiences that. He's a big football fan. He goes to a tailgate party, um, and there is a particular scene that really struck me where there were people that were boycotting one of the players, and there was a scene where they were like yelling at him saying that, too bad that you didn't kill yourself like you were supposed to, or you should have shot yourself in the head while you still had a chance. Like, not exact words, but that was happening. And it was just shocking to Pat. And Pat was talking to his therapist, who soon after became a acquaintance and a friend of his. And he's like, I don't understand why people would say such hurtful things um, to this player. And it turned out the player actually tried to kill himself at one point. And it was seen as a point to humor or a point to laugh at, to essentially bully people with. And such an eye opener. I mean, when you live it, I've had those experiences, like I said, where people have judged me on my mental health, with my depression, anxiety, and it's second nature to me. But reading this book, it really opened up my eyes to the fact that it's still happening. And come on, guys, it's 2019. Shouldn't we shouldn't be past this by now? Um, so yeah, it was such a good book, and there is a relationship that slowly develops. You don't get to see too much of the development between Pat and another woman by the name of Tiffany. Tiffany is a friend of a mutual friend of his, and she is struggling with depression, anxiety. She had her husband who had been tragically killed, and she's dealing with the grief that comes with that. So you kind of see them interacting with each other throughout the whole thing. I found it quite interesting to watch those interactions, but this is such a great book. If you haven't read it yet, Definitely pick it up. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I feel like it is a solid 4 stars. There's some things that I might have changed in it, but overall, I felt like it was a really good read, and I appreciated the fact that they did talk about the stigma behind mental illness. So yeah, those are the books I'm going to cover as of right now. Like I said, there is a couple other books that I read, um, but they were to the point where I just didn't care to review them, or one of them in particular I want to do a review a different way, and I'm going to talk about that in my next video with the update. But let me know what your thoughts are. If you read any of these books, great, tell me what you thought about them. I'd love to hear your comments. I always enjoy reading your commentary. If you like the video, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up. And also, if you're new and you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe. I'd love to talk to you guys some more. So thank you so much and have a good night. Bye.